Hello, my name is William Kreger, and this is my final presentation for IDS 402 Wellness class at Southern New Hampshire University. I'm presenting today on concussions, a health and wellness issue among high school football players. Concussions, a major issue among high school football players. Now, let it be known that a high school athlete can receive concussions in many different athletic activities, but this presentation will mainly focus on football. I'm focusing on football due to the issues that most head injuries in high school athletics have been found to occur in football-related activities. The National Collegiate Association of Athletics, also known as the NCAA, and the National Football League, also known as the NFL, have been involved in lawsuits from former athletes claiming of not being attended to properly after a head injury and from repeated head trauma. These players in these suits have complained about prolonged memory loss, seizures, and chronic depression. The highest occurs with concussions in the level of football played. High school football activities are the highest. Research done shows that there are an 11.2% rate of concussions happening per 10,000 athletic exposures. This is basically gameplay and practice. Athletic exposures are basically considered passive. This is important information because some researchers now believe that younger minds, which are developing, also take more time to heal from a concussion. It is also noted that in 2014, there were 5 high school athletes that had passed away due to a head injury while participating in football activities. The big issues are the big health and wellness issues at the high school level basically are the lack of care of a person with a concussion, the lack of expertise, not having a doctor or a certified athletic trainer on the sideline, and also budget concerns. The fact that the school or school district can't employ a doctor or athletic trainer on the sideline to diagnose these concussions, and the lack of education, either by educators, coaches, administration, and the list goes on from there, and even the player themselves. All 4 of these issues in taking care of athletes who suffer a concussion, whether it be mild to severe. Post-concussion syndrome. I brought up some of the issues with care of high school players due to post-concussion syndrome. So a definition of post-concussion syndrome. One who has had a concussion but faces issues of trying to get back into everyday functioning. These could be new symptoms that have developed after the person has actually suffered the concussion. Athletes could notice a change in their ability to think, remember, concentrate, sleeping patterns, and ability, personality issues, easily irritated, a lack of interest in everyday activities, just kind of blah, a continued walking or standing or lightheadedness issues. Post-concussions can lead to issues coming back into the learning environment. We have to remember that these kids don't just go to school to play football, they are still students. It's amazing how long a concussion can affect a high school athlete, and it takes everyone to help in the healing process, from the students, parents, teachers, and school medical personnel. Post-concussion can affect the high schooler's ability to learn and remember new facts, creating it difficult for them to prosper in schooling if there are any type of long-term effects from the injury. A concussion and its effects can also harm the athlete's overall wellness, either physically, emotionally, socially, intellectually, environmentally, occupational, spiritually, or even financially later down the road. In this slide, we'll talk about the anatomy of concussion. This slide is from the Centers of Disease Control, the CDC, and when you look at it, number one, there's a good fact here about how fast an actual football player can usually run in an average speed of 17 to 25 miles an hour. So the helmet collision could cause some significant type damage to the brain. Now, using this arrow as another player running into our player here on our slide. So the force of the contact is going to happen here at number 1 And number one is going to create a shock wave, which goes through the brain, and actually there is a fluid around the brain that is there to actually protect the brain. And sometimes this fluid, it's just a fluid, so sometimes it's hard for it to actually cushion hard enough blows. And when this shock wave happens from a hard hit, helmet to helmet hit, it actually triggers the brain, kind of moves it back and forth, and if it's hard enough, it'll push the brain actually back into the skull, which happens in number 3, right here. So the cerebral spinal fluid, the fluid I was talking about, which is here, and then here's the skull. So as you can see, it's in between the two, and what can happen is when it hits, it can actually hit up against the skull and actually create either a blood vessel type separation or either, a actual bruising of this part of the brain, the bruising of the brain, or any type of brain. It depends on wherever the shock wave is coming from, wherever the hit was taken on the helmet. That's basically an anatomy of how the concussion actually could happen. And I'll give you a second if you want to look at other issues on this slide. It has all kinds of other interesting information. But I'm basically using it just to explain how these hard hits happen and how it actually bruises the brain or causes damage to the brain. The University of Florida did a study basically on concussion and a high school's knowledge of what a concussion is. It was done, like I said, by the University of Florida and the National Athletic Trainers Association, or NATA. It's known that participating in sports while experiencing symptoms of a concussion can be quite serious. This study was done in the state of Florida, and it surveyed 334 high school football players from 11 high schools to determine the knowledge of concussion symptoms. So, in their findings, the researchers gave them these questions, and it was kind of like in a test form. It's like a bubble test. They took a pencil and they would bubble in their results. And when the researchers did their findings, they found the most correct identified was a headache. They knew that there was some dizziness associated with a concussion, maybe some confusion, and the overall most knew about a persistent type headache. Education findings were mostly, so these are students, this is basically how the students were being educated on what concussions are, or maybe even post-concussion type syndrome, which, post-concussion syndrome, maybe a lot of people know the symptoms of a concussion, but not the symptoms of post-concussion syndrome. And the overall findings were that mostly parents and another formal source would actually teach or tell the kids about, these athletes would find out information about having concussion or post-concussion syndrome. And that formal source could just be like another friend or maybe a coach. Overall, high school football players basically had no type of adequate knowledge of the symptoms or the consequences of actually playing with a concussion. So they knew what a concussion was, and they knew, if they had one, what kind of symptoms they could have, but they didn't know the symptoms of maybe saying if there was something else going on down the line after the period where you're supposed to be starting to get better from having a concussion, getting into post-concussion syndrome, and then also playing, the situations you can get into by playing with a concussion that could make the concussion or post-concussion syndrome even worse by playing with a concussion or the symptoms of post-concussion syndrome. Basically, a cultural change in football is basically part of solving the problem. Not only tech, like we saw in the last slide, but also cultural acknowledgement. Concussions are a serious issue, not only in football, but sports in general. Education, not just from parents and friends, like the University of Florida study showed, that education is needed from medical personnel, coaches, and athletic trainers. It's okay to be hurt. It's in the spirit of competition, team first. That's going to be a hard one to culturally change. You got the old adage of go, go, go. You know, play. You can play if you're hurt. That type of cultural change needs to happen, and it'll probably have to start at a younger age. More research is needed. It's still not completely understood how a long-term exposure to head trauma leads to long-term neurological issues. There just needs to be more research done. Like I said, or I didn't say it earlier, but basically this issue is probably only about 3 years old. I mean, it's fairly new. And it came about from lawsuits, and now top executives in leagues and NCAA and high schools now want to have better information about it. There's also been evidence of rule changes to reduce the concussion rate. So I have a 2013 high school picture here. It actually happened in 2014. Some new rules to high school football was that any player who initiates contact with a helmetless player will receive a personal foul penalty. And it is illegal for any player who has lost his helmet to participate beyond the immediate action during play. Basically, the bottom footnote there is basically an added clarification that if a player loses his helmet during a play and is not the result of the actions of a member of the opposing team, the player must sit out for at least one down. So just to keep the concussion rates down. These are some of my sources, and I would like to thank you for taking the time to view my presentation, and I hope you learned a lot about how concussions can affect young athletes, and I do appreciate you viewing.